In December 2023, a governing body member looked into a camera and told 8 million Jehovah's Witnesses they were free to grow a beard. 3 months later, another member announced that women could wear pants to meetings, that counting hours in field service was over, that disfellowshipped members could be greeted again. In less than 6 months, the governing body dismantled rules that had shaped millions of lives for decades, rules that had cost people privileges, friendships, and standing in their congregations. Gone. Just like that. But one rule still stands. One prohibition that touches more families, more childhoods, and more painful memories than almost any other. And right now, from Kingdom Halls to Reddit forums to the comments section of this channel, the same question keeps appearing. Will Jehovah's Witnesses be allowed to celebrate birthdays? To answer that, we didn't speculate. We followed the evidence through Watchtower archives, European courtrooms, and the organization's own statements. And what we found isn't a story about cake and candles. It's a story about control, money, legal survival, and a trail of inconsistencies that the governing body can no longer hide. Stay until the end, because in Part 5, we'll show you the one strategic investment that may force their hand before this year is over. Part 1. The rule that wasn't always a rule. Most Jehovah's Witnesses alive today believe the birthday prohibition is as old as the organization itself, a foundational truth rooted in Scripture, established from the very beginning. They are wrong, and the proof is in the Watchtower's own archives. Charles Taze Russell, the founder of the Bible student movement, never prohibited birthdays. His followers celebrated them openly. They also celebrated Christmas. And in 1926, a postcard photograph captured a scene that the modern organization would rather you never saw. 4 men sitting together at the Bethel Christmas dinner. Joseph Rutherford, Nathan Knorr, Frederick Franz, Carl Klein. Remember those names. Because 2 of them, Knorr and Franz, would go on to lead the organization that formally banned birthday celebrations in 1951. The same men who sat at that Christmas table in 1926 presided over an organization that told millions of people these celebrations were an offense to God. They did not prohibit what the Bible said was wrong. They prohibited what they themselves had been doing just years earlier. In 1927, Rutherford declared Christmas to be pagan. The Bethel family never celebrated it again. But birthdays survived. That is what most witnesses don't know. Even after Christmas was eliminated, even after Rutherford tightened his grip on every detail of witness life, birthdays continued for another 24 years. In the January 1940 Watchtower, a sister from Cleveland, Ohio, wrote about receiving a phonograph for her 80th birthday. She called it a birthday gift from Jehovah. That letter was published without correction, without rebuke, without a footnote suggesting she was wrong. It was not until 1951 that the Watchtower formally declared birthday celebrations objectionable, pagan origins. The 2 birthdays in Scripture, Pharaoh's and Herod's, both linked to executions. Therefore, the reasoning went, God disapproves. 75 years. That is how old this prohibition is. Not ancient, not apostolic, not from the 1st century. From 1951. Within living memory. And this matters, because the governing body has already shown, repeatedly, that rules without clear scriptural basis can be reversed overnight. Beards lasted 100 years. Gone in a video update. The hour counting system lasted decades, erased with a single announcement. If the pattern holds, the birthday prohibition is not a question of if, it's a question of when. But if the Bible didn't change between 1940 and 1951, what did change? The answer is not in theology. It's in the organization's growing need for social isolation, the need to make witnesses visibly different from the world around them. And today, that same drive for isolation has become the organization's greatest financial liability. Part 2. The courtrooms that changed everything. In January 2022, a former Jehovah's Witness named Rolf Furuli sent a letter to the Norwegian Ministry of Children and Family Affairs. His complaint was direct. The organization's shunning practices violated the freedom of members to leave the religion without punishment. That single letter triggered a legal battle that is still reshaping the Watchtower's global strategy. The Norwegian government investigated and concluded that witness practices were exclusionary. In 2022, the county governor of Oslo revoked the organization's registration as a recognized religious community, cutting off state subsidies the witnesses had received peacefully for 30 years, roughly $1.5 million annually. The right to solemnize marriages was also stripped away. The case went to the Oslo District Court. On March 4, 2024, the court ruled against the organization, confirming the revocation. For 12,000 Norwegian witnesses, their religion was effectively delegitimized by the state. Then, 11 days later, something happened that no one can dismiss as coincidence. On March 15, 2024, governing body member Mark Sanderson appeared on camera and announced the most sweeping policy changes in modern Watchtower history. Women could wear pants, beards were acceptable, disfellowshipped members could be greeted, judicial committees for baptized minors would now involve parents. The terminology shifted from disfellowshipped to removed. 11 days. After decades of absolute resistance, the governing body moved faster than it had on any policy matter in living memory. The timing was not theological, it was strategic. The witnesses appealed the Norwegian ruling. In February 2025, the case reached the Borgarting Court of Appeal. On March 14, 2025, the appellate court unanimously reversed the lower court's decision, declaring the government's actions unconstitutional. The witnesses were vindicated, registration restored, 8.5 million Norwegian kroner awarded for legal costs, but the Norwegian government refused to accept the result. In April 2025, the state filed an appeal to the Supreme Court. By August 2025, the Supreme Court authorized the hearing. This case is now heading to Norway's highest court, the fourth round of a legal war that shows no sign of ending. And Norway is not alone. Similar legal challenges involving shunning policies, children's rights, and religious freedom are active or looming in France, Belgium, and Sweden. Each case demands the same thing from the Watchtower: prove that your organization does not punish people for leaving. Prove that your rules do not harm children. Prove that you respect individual freedom. Every cosmetic change the governing body makes strengthens that legal argument. Every prohibition they maintain becomes a potential liability. And the birthday ban sits squarely at that intersection, a rule that is impossible to defend in a European courtroom, that visibly affects children, and that carries no serious theological weight. If the shunning policy was enough to trigger a national legal battle, the birthday prohibition is not far behind. The question is whether the governing body will wait for a court to force the issue, or move first. Part 3. The pagan argument that already collapsed. This is where the governing body's own reasoning becomes their biggest problem. The official justification for the birthday prohibition rests on two pillars. First, the only two birthdays mentioned in Scripture, Pharaoh's in Genesis and Herod's in Matthew, are both associated with executions. Second, birthday celebrations have pagan roots, tied to astrology, superstition, and ancient ritual. But here is what the governing body has already admitted in their own publications about pagan origins. Wedding rings, rooted in pagan Rome. Permitted, because the modern meaning, they say, has replaced the ancient one. Toasting with glasses, once prohibited because of its alleged connection to pagan libation rituals. That prohibition was quietly dropped. Neckties, piñatas. The names of the days of the week all have documented pagan origins. All are accepted without controversy. The governing body has established, clearly and repeatedly, that a modern practice can be separated from its ancient origin, that the meaning a culture assigns today overrides whatever meaning existed centuries ago. So the question writes itself. If that logic applies to the gold on your finger and the glass in your hand, why doesn't it apply to the cake on your child's table? The logic was already broken. They just need an honorable exit to admit it. And the scriptural argument is no stronger. Yes, two biblical birthdays involved executions. But Scripture also records feasts, banquets, and celebrations that involved no death at all. The wedding at Cana, the feast for the prodigal son, the celebration when the walls of Jerusalem were rebuilt. If two negative examples prove God condemns a practice, then multiple positive examples of celebration should prove God approves of joy. Even Job chapter 1, where Job's sons held feasts, each one on his own day, has been interpreted by mainstream scholars as birthday celebrations for centuries. The Watchtower rejects that reading. But the Hebrew text is ambiguous enough that their interpretation is a preference, not a certainty. The point is not that the Bible explicitly supports birthdays. The point is that the Bible does not explicitly prohibit them. And the governing body has now set the precedent, again and again, that when the scriptural case is weak, the rule can go. Part 4. The cost. No one calculates. We read every comment on this channel. every single one. And over the past year, a pattern has emerged that no Watchtower publication will ever acknowledge. Thousands of you, current witnesses, former witnesses, people who left last month and people who left 30 years ago, have written about birthdays with a depth of grief that stops you in your tracks. Parents who never celebrated a single one of their children's birthdays and now carry that silence like a stone. Grandparents who missed every candle, every wish, every moment of a grandchild feeling special. Children who sat in classrooms watching their friends sing and share cake while they stared at their desks, marked as different by a rule they were too young to understand. Former witnesses writing about celebrating their first birthday at 40, at 50, at 63. In tears, not from happiness, but from the sudden recognition of everything that was taken. This is not about egoism. It is not about wanting to be the center of attention. It is about milestones of life that were stolen. When you read the comments on this channel, you realize that the birthday is not really about the birthday. It is the symbol of a childhood that many never had. And these are exactly the kind of testimonies that European courts examine when they evaluate whether a religious organization crosses the line from doctrine into harm. When Norway's court scrutinized shunning, they did not assess theology. They assessed impact. They asked, does this practice cause psychological harm? Does it restrict freedom to leave? Does it affect children? The birthday prohibition answers yes to all three. It isolates witness children from their peers in a way that has nothing to do with faith and everything to do with visible conformity. It marks them as different at an age when difference feels like punishment. And when a member leaves and begins celebrating, it becomes one more piece of evidence for the family that they have become worldly, one more justification for emotional distance. If shunning was enough to deregister a religion in Norway, the birthday prohibition is not a minor issue. It is a measurable harm. And the courts are watching. Part 5. The billion-dollar image problem. There is one more piece of evidence that most analysts are missing, and it may be the most important one. In November 2024, the Watchtower received final approval to begin major construction on its new media production facility in Ramapo, New York. This is not a Kingdom Hall. This is a 249-acre campus with 12 recording studios, 6 professional sound stages, a full set building workshop, multiple photography studios, 600 residential units, a visitors center open to the public, and a central energy plant. By January 2026, the first permanent foundations were being poured. Nearly 300 workers attended the first Watchtower study held on the construction site. The Ramapo project is the largest physical investment in the Watchtower's modern history, and it signals exactly where the governing body sees the future. Not in door-to-door preaching, not in printed magazines, but in digital media, broadcast content, and global video production. An organization building a media empire cannot afford to keep defending rules that make it look like a relic of the 1950s. Every documentary that highlights the birthday prohibition undermines the modern, compassionate image Ramapo is being built to project. Every news segment showing a witness child excluded from a classroom celebration is a public relations failure that no studio can fix. Every ex-member interview describing stolen milestones becomes ammunition for the very narrative the governing body is spending hundreds of millions to counteract. They need Ramapo to succeed, and Ramapo's success depends on the world seeing Jehovah's Witnesses as reasonable, approachable, and family-friendly. A religion that forbids children from blowing out candles on a cake is none of those things. The math is simple. The birthday prohibition costs more to defend than it costs to drop. Conclusion: a survival maneuver, not new light. So will 2026 be the year? Here is what the evidence shows. The prohibition has no strong scriptural foundation, and the governing body knows it. The pagan origins argument has already been abandoned for practices far more rooted in paganism than birthday candles. European courts are actively pressuring the organization to soften its most controlling policies. The Norway case is heading to the Supreme Court, and every prohibition that restricts children becomes a legal vulnerability. And the Ramapo investment demands a version of the religion that doesn't repel the outside world. The conditions for change are not building. They have already arrived. But here is what the evidence also tells us. If the change comes, it will not come as an apology. There will be no acknowledgement that 75 years of this prohibition caused immeasurable harm. No admission that parents missed their children's milestones for nothing. No moment of accountability. It will come as new light, a quiet governing body update, a reframing of conscience, They will talk about personal occasions or family milestones and leave the word birthday unspoken. They will present it as spiritual progress, evidence that Jehovah is guiding his organization into deeper understanding. They will not apologize for the families divided since 1951. They will simply change the rule and expect you to forget the past. That is not new light. That is a survival maneuver. And every witness watching this video has the right to ask the question the governing body will never answer. If this rule was wrong for 75 years, what else is wrong right now? Call to action. If this investigation changed how you see the changes happening inside the organization, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel. We are tracking every policy shift, every court ruling, and every piece of evidence, and we will be here when the announcement comes. Drop a comment below. Tell us, if the birthday prohibition is lifted tomorrow, what is the first thing you would do? We read every single response. And if you are watching this from inside a kingdom hall, know that you are not the only one asking these questions.